I stood at the edge of the cemetery, arms folded tight against the early autumn wind, watching the last clumps of soil hit the coffin. The priest was still murmuring final prayers, but I wasn't listening. My ears were ringing, not from grief but from silence. The kind of silence that makes you feel like a ghost at your own father's funeral. Not a single glance. Not from my stepmother, who dabbed her eyes like she was the grieving widow of the century. Not from my half-brother Kyle, who stood with his hand on her shoulder like he was guarding a throne. Not from Emma, my sister, who scrolled through her phone while the priest tried to deliver his final words with dignity. No one looked at me. No one even acknowledged I was there. I wasn't late. I wasn't disruptive. I was just invisible. When the ceremony ended, people slowly began to disperse. Some gave me awkward hugs. A few family friends whispered, "I'm so sorry," and "Your dad loved you so much," with forced half-smiles. But my own blood. Nothing. Not even a nod. As everyone walked toward their cars, I stood still. My shoes sunk into the muddy grass. I watched them drive off in clusters, headed for the post-funeral gathering. I wasn't told about any gathering. No address. No invite. Just like I hadn't been told about his sudden hospitalization either. He'd been gone 3 days before I even heard. My heart was heavy, but it wasn't just grief weighing it down. It was something else. Something sharp. A slow-burning question that started forming in my gut the moment I realized everyone was avoiding me. What weren't they telling me? It wasn't just cold behavior. It was calculated. A wall had gone up, and I was clearly on the outside. As I stood alone, staring at the freshly turned earth, I tried to shake it off. Tried to remind myself that grief makes people weird. That maybe they were just in shock. Maybe I was overthinking it. But deep down something felt wrong. And I had no idea just how wrong it was. Until I found out there had already been a will reading, and I hadn't even been invited. 2 days later, I was sitting at the edge of my bed, still in sweatpants when I got the call. It wasn't from my stepmother. Not from my siblings. It was from Aunt Carol, my dad's cousin, the only one who still bothered to check in on me now and then. Her voice crackled through the speaker. "Melissa, I'm so sorry about what happened at the reading." I blinked. "What reading?" Silence. "You wait. You didn't know. The will. They read it yesterday morning. Call Emma your stepmom. Everyone was there. They said you couldn't make it. That you were grieving privately." I swear the room shifted under my feet. "They said I what?" "I assumed you'd chosen not to go. I didn't want to bring it up if it was still too raw." My throat tightened. There had been a will reading. My own father's will. And they held it without me. "Where was it?" asked, voice flat. "His lawyer's office. Downtown. Wilkins and Rowe. I saw Kyle there. Looked like he had the world in his pocket. He even thanked me for coming." She hesitated. "I'm so sorry, honey. I thought you knew." I ended the call politely, then just sat there staring at the wall. No one had told me. They had gone behind my back. They had lied to others and probably to the lawyer too. And worst of all, they hadn't even bothered to pretend I was part of the family anymore. My fingers trembled as I searched through emails, text threads, voicemails. Nothing. Not a single line about the will. Not even a fake apology or an excuse. It was intentional. I could feel it like a pulse in the air. This quiet, backhanded exile. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had cut me out. And that's when the real questions began to brew. Why was I left out? What were they hiding? And more importantly, what did they think I wouldn't find? I didn't know it yet, but the answer to that question was everything. The next morning I called Emma first. She answered after 4 rings, her voice laced with the kind of fake surprise you only hear in bad soap operas. "Oh, hey, Melissa." "Hey," I said calmly. "Quick question. When were you all planning to tell me about Dad's will reading?" Silence. Then, I thought you knew. I assumed someone told you. Carl said you didn't want to come. That you were, like, not in the right headspace. My headspace. I laughed, bitter and sharp. You all sat in a lawyer's office and divided his legacy while I was still laying flowers at his grave. And nobody thought to send a single text. Emma exhaled hard through her nose, clearly annoyed. Look, it was complicated. Everything happened so fast. You've been distant, Mal, ever since Dad got sick. I didn't know he was sick. Snap. No one told me until he was already gone. More silence. Then a half-hearted, well, maybe that's how he wanted it. There it was. Knife. Slid in sideways. The kind of comment meant to shut me up, to make me question myself. Called Kyle next. He didn't pick up. I tried again, voicemail. Then I tried my stepmother. She declined the call. I sent a message. Why wasn't I invited to Dad's will reading? What exactly are you all hiding? No reply. I saw the read receipt. She had opened it. She just didn't care to answer. Over the next few hours I sent more messages. Polite ones. Then sharper ones. Then I stopped being polite altogether. Not one reply. I was being ghosted. Gaslit. Like I didn't exist. Like I hadn't spent my childhood in that house. Like I hadn't taken care of my dad every summer before she came along. Like I hadn't held his hand when he had that heart scare 2 years ago. They wanted me erased. Not just from the will but from the story entirely. And that's when I realized something that made my stomach turn. They didn't just want the money. They wanted to pretend I was never his daughter at all. But I wasn't about to let that happen. It didn't start with the will. The cracks had been forming for years. Quietly, like roots growing under the surface, breaking the foundation little by little until everything caved in. Her name was Teresa. My dad met her when I was 15, just a few years after my mom passed. She was charming. The kind of woman who always knew what to say when other people were watching. And when they weren't. Cold. Controlling. Calculated. At first, she was subtle, nudging my dad to encourage independence in me. Telling him I needed to grow up, that I was too attached to the past. Suddenly, the photo of Mom disappeared from the mantel. Then my room was repainted. Then my birthday dinner was rescheduled for her spa weekend. By the time I was in college, she had him wrapped around her perfectly manicured finger. He stopped calling as often. Our weekly coffee chats faded to holiday check-ins. If I asked about it, he'd say things like, "You're busy now, sweetheart," or "Teresa just thinks I shouldn't distract you." Distract me. She played the long game, slowly isolating him, not just from me but from everyone who might challenge her grip. By the time Dad got sick, she was the gatekeeper of every conversation, every doctor's update, every family decision. And I was always out of the loop. I started putting the pieces together now, sitting on the edge of my kitchen counter, staring at an old photo of Dad and me on the lake. Back when summer still felt like home. That's when it hit me. She'd been preparing for this for years. Getting close to his finances. Encouraging him to simplify his accounts. Helping him organize his estate. Pushing for updates, revisions, trust transfers. And the worst part. Dad probably had no idea what she was really doing. He wasn't a cruel man. He loved me, I knew that in my bones. But he was tired, weakened. And Teresa. She knew exactly when to strike. And now, somehow, she had convinced everyone, including my siblings, that I didn't belong. That I was a threat. An outsider. But I remembered something. Something my father once said years ago, before his health had started fading. One of the last real conversations we'd had alone, when his eyes were still clear and his voice was still warm. If anything ever happens to me, go check the lake house. Closet safe. Just in case. Just in case. That phrase echoed in my mind like a whisper through a locked door. And suddenly, I knew where I had to go next. The house didn't feel like his anymore. I pulled into the driveway just before sunset. The porch light was off. The windows were dark. And the lawn, once obsessively trimmed by Dad every Saturday morning, was already starting to yellow under Teresa's neglect. I stood there for a few seconds, hand on the car door, staring at the front steps. I hadn't been here since the summer before things got weird. Before the silence. Before the lies. My key still worked. But when I stepped inside, it felt like walking into a stage set. Familiar furniture in unfamiliar places. Walls that used to be covered with old fishing photos and my childhood artwork were now stripped bare or replaced with abstract prints. Cold, emotionless decor straight out of a catalog. I wandered through the hall in a daze. My footsteps echoed. Dad's old recliner was gone. His bookshelf, where he kept his war novels, and the photo album I'd made him for his 60th, gone. Even the faint smell of his cologne that used to linger in the hallway. Erased. Scrubbed clean like someone was trying to wipe him out of the house he built. I reached his bedroom. The door was open. The bed was made military style, tight corners and a single pillow. The side where he used to sleep. Me. His nightstand drawer, once filled with scribbled notes, loose change, and receipts from our donut runs, was bare. Everything personal had been cleared out. Everything real. There was no trace of him here anymore. I checked the desk in his home office. Picked it. Me. The kitchen. Sterile. Garage. Cleaned out. I walked back to the living room, heart pounding with every step. They'd already begun selling it. I could feel it in the air. And just as I pulled out my phone to check the county registry, my stomach dropped. There it was. Pending, under contract. The house was already in escrow. They were selling it without ever telling me. I sat down hard on the staircase, my hands shaking. They had locked me out emotionally. Now they were literally locking me out of the home I grew up in. But then I remembered. Not this house. The lake house. Dad's words came flooding back. If anything ever happens to me, go check the safe at the lake house. You'll know what to do. It was time. They thought they'd erased me. But they didn't know what he left behind. The lake house sat 2 hours north, tucked between whispering pines and the stillness of water that never forgot. It had always been Dad's sanctuary. Long before Teresa. Long before the chaos. It was also the last place we ever had a real conversation. I remembered that night like it was carved into my bones. Just the two of us sitting on the back deck, beer in his hand, stars overhead, the lake glimmering with moonlight. He was quieter than usual, more reflective. And that's when he said it. Melissa, if anything ever happens to me. The closet in the lake house. Safe. You'll know what to do. At the time I thought it was just Dad being. Well, Dad. Dramatic. Sentimental. He always had this low-key paranoia, like he didn't fully trust the people around him, but never wanted to say it out loud. But now. That sentence rang in my head like a siren. I called out of work the next day. Packed a small bag. And left without telling anyone. The drive was quiet, too quiet. The farther I got from the city, the more the weight on my chest shifted into something sharper. Not grief. Not confusion. Resolve. I wasn't going there for closure. I was going there for answers. The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled into the old driveway. Weeds had started creeping up the sides of the deck. The wind chimes still hung by the porch, clinking like they remembered me. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Dust danced in the shafts of sunlight cutting through the curtains. The house smelled like cedar and thyme. It looked untouched, frozen in a memory that hadn't been disturbed. Everything was exactly where it used to be. Dad's old fishing hat on the hook, coffee-stained mug in the sink, and then, the master bedroom. The closet door creaked as I opened it. I ran my hand along the back wall until I felt the small wooden panel. It clicked when I pressed it inward, revealing the old combination safe he'd installed himself years ago. I'd completely forgotten it even existed. I knelt down. My fingers hovered over the dial. My heart pounded. Would it still open? Had someone else already found it? I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and turned the dial to the combination I remembered from when I was 16, the date of my mother's birthday. Click. And what was inside changed everything. The moment the safe door creaked open, the air shifted. Not just in the room but inside me. Lying inside, stacked neatly like someone knew this day would come, were 5 thick manila folders. On top of them, a single envelope with my name written in Dad's handwriting. Not Melissa. He had written it the way only he ever did. My lease. My throat clenched. I sat on the floor and stared at it for a long moment, like opening it might break something in me I couldn't put back together. But I had come this far. Opened it. Inside was a short letter, no more than 2 paragraphs. But it was the most thing I had read in years. If you're reading this, they've probably already tried to shut you out. I didn't always get it right, but I saw how Teresa changed things. I saw what she did to the family. That's why I made sure these properties are legally yours. I transferred the titles years ago. Quietly, without telling her. They're in your name alone. The deeds are in the folders. Keep them safe. And don't let them take what's yours. Love you always, Dad. My hands were trembling. I opened the folders. Each one contained an original deed. Official, notarized, dated long before Dad's health started fading. They weren't just copies. They were legitimate, legally binding property documents. One for the lake house. One for a commercial building downtown I didn't even know he owned. One for a rental duplex. One for a piece of land near the coast. And the last, a storage unit contract that Dad had paid for 10 years in advance under my name. The key taped to the corner of the page. I sat back on the carpet, stunned. While Teresa and my siblings had been sipping wine at brunch, patting themselves on the back for locking me out of his will. They had no idea the real estate was never part of the estate. It had all been transferred, quietly and legally, to me. 'Cause he knew. He saw the manipulation, the control, the isolation, and this was his final act of protection. The folders sat on my lap like they weighed 100 pounds. But it wasn't the paper, it was what they meant. Proof. Not just of ownership but of intention. Dad hadn't forgotten me. He hadn't written me out. He had protected me in the only way he could. Silently behind the curtain Teresa had drawn around him. Each deed was signed, notarized, and filed with exacting care. The signatures were clear. The timelines deliberate. Most of them were transferred over 5 years ago. Long before his health had started to decline, long before anyone could argue he was confused or coerced. I spread the documents out across the bed, taking pictures of each page and uploading them to a secure folder. My brain kicked into gear. Emotion faded, replaced by cold, methodical focus. What did I have? Legal proof of ownership for 4 valuable properties. A handwritten letter confirming intent, signed in his handwriting. Dates that predated any trust revisions Teresa may have pushed. And a key to a storage unit registered under my name. What did they think? They thought they won. That I was out of the way. That I'd quietly disappear while they carved up what they thought was theirs. They thought a fake will and a few silent weeks would be enough to erase me. But they were wrong. I made 2 calls that night. First to a lawyer, an estate specialist I'd worked with once for a freelance marketing campaign. Then to a title agent I trusted from my old real estate job. By morning I had appointments lined up. When I walked into the attorney's office the next day, I carried those folders like a torch. I laid them out on the table, one by one, with my dad's letter placed on top like a shield. He read in silence for a long time. Then he looked up. "Melissa," he said slowly, tapping the lake house deed, "these aren't part of the probated estate. Your father transferred them directly to you. If this holds, they don't belong to the trust. They belong to you." A slow burn started in my chest. They left me out of the will because they thought they had it all. But they forgot the one thing Teresa could never control. My father's love for me, and his ability to act quietly behind her back. I wasn't a ghost. I was the legal owner of every property they thought they inherited. And it was time they found out. I sat in my car outside the attorney's office, gripping the steering wheel like I could crush it. For the first time in weeks, my grief didn't feel like a weight. It felt like fuel. I could almost hear Dad's voice beside me, soft but firm. "Don't let them walk over you, Lise. You've always been stronger than you think." They thought I'd disappear. That I'd quietly accept the lie they wrapped in legalese and fake condolences. They thought grief would paralyze me. But now I had something more powerful than anger. Clarity. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to argue. I was going to let paperwork do the talking. By that afternoon, I'd sent formal letters, through my lawyer, to every person who had attended the will reading. Teresa. Emma. The probate attorney. All of them. Each envelope contained a certified copy of one of the property deeds with my name clearly stamped across the top, a letter from my attorney asserting legal ownership, and a polite cutting statement. These properties are not subject to division, probate, or contest. Any further attempt to dispute will be handled accordingly. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. I knew it would land like a hammer. But I didn't stop there. With the title agent's help, I had property listings paused mid-sale, escrow accounts flagged, listings temporarily frozen. Because legally, they were trying to sell property that didn't belong to them. And if they pushed, I was ready to press charges for attempted fraud. By nightfall my phone started buzzing. Missed calls from Kyle. A voicemail from Emma. Melissa, this is getting out of hand. Can we talk? Then Teresa's number flashed on the screen. I let it ring. She called again. And again. I finally picked up on the third try. Her voice was cold, controlled. But I could hear the panic under the surface. Melissa, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I let the silence drag. Then I said, No, Teresa. There's been a correction. One your husband made years ago. You just didn't see it coming. Blick. I hung up before she could respond. I looked at myself in the mirror that night. Same face, same tired eyes. But something was different now. I wasn't grieving in the shadows anymore. I was standing in the light, with deeds in one hand and dignity in the other. 3 days later they held a brunch. An elegant, quiet affair at Teresa's favorite country club. A soft little gathering to celebrate Dad's life, according to Emma's Instagram story. I watched the video twice. Teresa in a pearl necklace. Kyle raising a mimosa. Emma laughing like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. The caption read, New beginnings. He would have wanted peace. They were toasting to peace after cutting me out of my father's will like I was a stray name in a phone book. Smiling like their plan had gone off without a hitch. But I had already sent the storm. The next morning, during what should have been their victory lap, a courier walked into that country club brunch. He wore a suit, no expression, and carried a leather folio with a gold-trimmed envelope. One by one he handed them letters, right there at the table, in front of their friends, their co-workers, their carefully curated circle of people who didn't know what they'd done behind closed doors. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. But Aunt Carol was. And she called me the second she got to her car. Melissa, she said, breathless. I've never seen Teresa lose her composure like that. She turned purple. Kyle was trying to Google something right at the table. And Emma nearly spilled her drink all over herself when she read your name at the bottom of the page. Smiled. Those letters weren't angry. They were facts. Each one included certified deeds, the timeline of transfers, and a very polite legal memo stating that the properties, all of them, had been independently removed from the probated estate years prior, with full intent and legal protection. There would be no loopholes, no challenges, no delay tactics. Everything they were banking on, the vacation home, the rental checks, the upcoming commercial property sale, gone. Because they didn't realize. My father didn't just sign me back into his life. He locked me into his legacy. And now the brunch they threw to celebrate his memory would be remembered for the moment they realized they never really had anything to celebrate at all. The courthouse smelled like old paper and quiet tension. I sat in the front row with my attorney, a woman named Janelle who had the calm energy of someone who never entered a battle unprepared. Across the aisle sat Teresa, dressed like morning had just begun. Black dress, black gloves, and a pair of oversized sunglasses she didn't take off the entire time. Beside her, Kyle scrolled furiously through his phone, whispering to their attorney. Emma. Well, Emma wouldn't even look at me. The probate judge entered with a stack of files and an arched brow that told me she had read everything. Let's get one thing clear before we begin, the judge said, adjusting her glasses. We are not here to debate the morality of anyone's actions. We're here to review legal property ownership and confirm what is, and isn't part of the estate under probate. She turned to my side of the room. Ms. Carter, she nodded at Janelle. You may begin. Janelle stood, calm and deliberate. She placed a thick binder on the judge's desk, tabbed, highlighted, and organized with surgical precision. Your Honor, what my client, Melissa Hart, brings forth today is not a claim of inheritance, but a presentation of independent ownership. The deeds in question were transferred directly to her by the deceased, years before his passing, with notarized proof, tax records, and full legal clearance. They were not included in the estate because they were no longer his property at the time of death. She slid the top page forward. The judge scanned it. Her eyes stopped at the signature. She tapped the date. This transfer was made 6 years ago. Janelle nodded. Correct. 2 years before any will revisions introduced by Ms. Teresa Langford. A visible twitch passed through Teresa's jaw. Then the judge turned to their side. Ms. Langford, your claim that the properties were meant for you holds no weight here. Intention cannot override executed transfer of ownership. Do you or your attorney have any legal basis to contest the deeds themselves? Their lawyer fumbled, flipped pages, mumbled something about emotional manipulation and mental capacity. The judge cut him off. Unless you're presenting medical documentation of the deceased's incompetency at the time of transfer, this line of argument ends here. He had nothing. They had nothing. The courtroom was silent. And then, finally, the judge leaned back and delivered the words I had waited weeks to hear. These properties legally belong to Ms. Hart. They are not part of the estate. This court recognizes her sole ownership. Across the room, I heard a muffled gasp. Emma looked like she'd been slapped. Kyle's face flushed red. Teresa sat frozen, lips parted, sunglasses still hiding her eyes, but I could see it in her posture. Power was gone, and for the first time in years, had it back. Once the gavel came down, the unraveling began. The court's ruling didn't just strip them of the properties. They triggered a chain reaction that exposed every quiet deal Teresa had tried to push through behind closed doors. The Lake House. Already listed with a luxury realtor. I called the agency the next morning. I'm sorry, I said calmly, but that home isn't theirs to sell. It's mine. The agent was stunned. We've already accepted a deposit. Then you'll want to return it, unless you enjoy lawsuits. Within 24 hours, the listing vanished. The buyer pulled out. I had legal paperwork sent to every involved party, making my ownership crystal clear. And I wasn't done. The downtown commercial property. Teresa had leveraged it. Yes, she had used it as collateral in a short-term loan she took out under the estate's name. A bold, illegal move. And now that the court had ruled it wasn't hers to touch, that loan defaulted instantly. The bank came knocking, but not at my door. They went straight to her. I heard, through Aunt Carol, that Teresa had a full-blown breakdown when the bank froze her accounts pending investigation. Turns out, her peaceful new beginning brunch had been financed by my father's asset-backed credit line. The duplex. They'd already rented it out. Kyle was collecting checks every month from tenants who had no idea they were paying the wrong person. That ended with a cease and desist so fast. The tenants started emailing me directly for clarification. I reassured them nothing was changing. Only the names on the checks. All of them had acted so sure, so entitled, like Dad's legacy was a buffet they could just help themselves to. But the truth, the moment those deeds had been signed and filed years ago, they had already lost. Every lie they built, every deal they struck, every promise they made to themselves and their friends. All of it was built on sand. And now the tide had rolled in. I didn't need revenge. I had facts. Proof. Law. And now the very thing they used to erase me, legal process, was the same thing that had handed them their reckoning. I didn't mean for it to happen in public. But then again, Teresa always did prefer the spotlight. It was a Friday afternoon 2 weeks after the court ruling, and I was at the county clerk's office finalizing a property record update for the lake house. Quiet routine, nothing dramatic. Until I heard her voice in the hallway. Raise. Trembling with rage. That girl is lying. She manipulated him. She snuck around behind my back and, no, I don't care what the judge said. I turned and there she was. Teresa, standing at the front desk, arguing with a startled clerk, sunglasses perched in her hair like some kind of battle crown. Her makeup was too perfect, like she'd painted on control with mascara and powder. But her hands were shaking. Her voice cracked at the edges. She hadn't seen me yet. The clerk, flustered but firm, tried to speak. Ma'am, the records have already been corrected. The ownership is finalized. You have no legal standing. No legal, she gasped. I raised that man's children. I ran that house. And she abandoned him. Her voice broke on the last word. That's when she saw me. Her eyes locked onto mine like heat-seeking missiles. And for a second the entire room went quiet. You think this makes you better than us? She snapped, walking toward me, heels clicking like a threat. You think a few papers and a dusty safe make you his daughter again? I didn't flinch. Teresa, I said softly, I never stopped being his daughter. You just spent years pretending that didn't matter. She stared at me, breathing heavy. Then she laughed, a cold, brittle sound. You'll lose it all. One day. People like you don't hold on to power. You're not ruthless enough. I didn't smile. Instead, I pulled Dad's letter from my bag. The original, not the scanned copy. I handed it to her. Read this. She hesitated, snatched it. Her eyes scanned the page. I saw it happen, the moment the words pierced through the delusion. Her hands began to shake again. They've probably already tried to shut you out. That's why I made sure. She shoved the letter back into my chest. He was weak, she whispered. He let you manipulate him. No, I said. He finally saw you. That's why he planned ahead. She turned and stormed out of the office, nearly knocking over a chair as she went. Everyone in the room stared. No one moved to stop her. That was the last time I saw her in person. Not because I ran, but because she couldn't stand to see a truth she didn't control. And in that moment I realized. It only took one article. A local journalist from a regional business magazine had been covering probate cases and real estate fraud. Nothing national, nothing flashy. But he caught wind of my courtroom win through public records, and then through a clerk who apparently had witnessed Teresa's outburst firsthand. He reached out politely. I almost didn't respond. But something in me knew this wasn't just my story anymore. It was bigger. A case study in manipulation, legacy theft, and the quiet ways women like Teresa try to erase those they can't control. So I gave him the facts, nothing more. The legal timeline. The deed transfers. My father's letter. I didn't throw anyone under the bus. I didn't have to. The truth did it for me. The article dropped under the headline. The daughter they erased, and the deeds that brought it all down. Within a week, it spread beyond local circles. Real estate law blogs picked it up. Estate planning experts shared it. Even a few feminist newsletters reposted the story, calling it a quiet masterclass in generational revenge through paper trails. Teresa hated attention, she didn't cure it. This wasn't a lifestyle feature about her pearls and PTA charities. This was raw exposure, of the kind you can't control with lipstick and a forced laugh. But the biggest shift. My family. Suddenly they started reaching out. Emma texted me for the first time since the funeral. I didn't know Dad left that stuff for you. I'm sorry. I really am. Then Kyle, after weeks of silence, left a voicemail. Stammering. Awkward. I guess I didn't really understand what she was doing. To all of us. Even my cousin James, who had taken Teresa's side from day one, sent a message. Never thought she was capable of this. You good? need anything. Funny how truth has gravity. When it finally drops, everything built on lies has no choice but to shift or collapse. But I wasn't bitter. Not anymore. I didn't want apologies or reconciliations wrapped in guilt. I wanted clarity. And to honor my dad. Not through court victories or headlines, but by building a life he'd be proud of. He didn't just leave me property. He left me proof that he saw me. He knew me. And in his quiet, stubborn way, he gave me the last word. The lake house was quiet when I returned. No courtrooms. No phone calls. No headlines. Just me, a suitcase, and a key that still worked. I stepped inside slowly, letting the smell of cedar and old memories wash over me. Sunlight poured through the curtains onto the hardwood floor. Dust particles danced in the air like snowflakes suspended in amber. I didn't come to gloat. Came to breathe. To sit in the place where my father's handwriting still lived in margins of old books. Where his fishing hat still hung crooked by the door. Where I could still hear his voice faintly echoing off the water, calling my name across the lake when I was 10 and afraid of the dark. I walked through the living room barefoot, stopping at the mantel. I placed the letter, the original, back where it belonged. I wasn't going to frame it. I wasn't going to lock it away. I just wanted it to rest. 'Cause now I could rest too. Matey sat out on the back deck. The breeze was warm and the lake was calm, rippling only at the edges like it, too, was finally exhaling. I opened my journal and started writing. Not legal notes, not strategy, not battle plans. Just words. Words about my father. How he wasn't perfect. How he let things slip. How he got tired and quiet and confused sometimes. But how, in the end, he remembered me. Not just with property, but with trust, with thought, with love. The kind of love that doesn't always shout, but always shows up when it matters most. As the sun began to set, I walked down to the dock barefoot, watching the reflection shimmer. The same dock where he used to teach me how to bait a hook, how to tie a line, how to wait with patience for something you couldn't see yet. I stood at the edge and whispered, "I handled it, Dad. Just like you knew I would." And in that moment there were no headlines, no courtrooms. No anger. Just a daughter, a dock, and the quiet truth that the people who try to erase you never count on you coming back stronger. Not with vengeance. With proof. With peace. With your name still written in ink, where it always belonged.